What's going on, everyone? Matthew here on the channel, joined by the main man himself.
Oh, sorry, Callum.
I was switching it up there. Maybe I caught you off guard. Yeah. So as you've probably seen, there's a Spider-Man trailer, and it's gone viral absolutely everywhere. I was looking on the morning it came out, and it had only been out for a few hours, and it got like 20 million YouTube views. It's going crazy. It seems like all the hype is around this movie, of course, being Spider-Man No Way Home. So yeah. Well, I think the main thing was with this one is that there was a leaked kind of trailer before this. Maybe I don't know whether it was like the day of or maybe the day before. Can you shed any light on like when that was, or was it a few weeks ago that trailer was leaked?
The leak for this film.
Yeah.
It was yeah, I think it was the day before, to my knowledge. It was because people were bringing up the fact that it actually was leaked on the day that was marked with a heart on Vision and Wanda's
Mm,
calendar and WandaVision.
yeah.
Yeah, so I believe that was the 23rd of August, the day before. I mean, you mentioned the views on the trailer. Whenever I heard like 20 million, I was like, what a pittance, because I watched this trailer like 7 times now. I'm like, well, if everybody's watching it 7 times, that's only 3 million people. That's no one.
Yeah, I know. Like when you think about these kind of Marvel trailers, especially with these sort of big universe altering movies, they're gonna get loads of eyeballs on it, and it kind of brings me a similar feeling that I had when Infinity War and Endgame came out in the trailers for them. I remember when we were at school and I was like I think I was in like math class or something when the Endgame trailer came out. So yeah, there was huge hype behind that, and I feel like there's a similar vibe with this one. Everyone's talking about it, scrolling through Facebook and stuff, like that's all that's being shared at the minute. So we just want to do this little short video to talk about the trailer, just our thoughts on the movie. Last year, and we kind of done a podcast on this film about a lot of the leaks and our theories about it and what we were feeling. But now we actually have 3 minutes of footage for the film. So I'll just pass over to you, mate. Like, what's your thoughts on the trailer, and has it got you excited for it?
Well, I was going to ask you quickly. The Marvel standard is obviously to put out a trailer 6 months in advance of the film. This came out, shy of 4 months of this movie coming out. Do you think that's because they were still trying to figure out a release date based on the pandemic, or do you think that was to generate hype? I mean, I don't think they really needed to generate hype. I think you could release no trailer, people would be excited. You could release three, and it'd be equal, I imagine.
It's funny you say that because I was watching a lot of videos about this trailer, breakdowns, those kind of things, and every video was like, oh, I'm not surprised they're not showing, Toby and Andrew because, oh, it's still a long way from the film. It's a bit too early. I kind of thought to myself, a bit too early. Like the film's out in a few months. Like, you gotta market that pretty soon. Like if you go like movie industry, standard, I guess, there is a decent gap between the teaser trailer and the second trailer. So you kind of think that a second trailer for this isn't going to be released until maybe like late November, start of December. I'm kind of thinking with this.
Maybe.
I guess that kind of makes sense because obviously that's within a few weeks of the film. But yeah, man, I think I just worry that there is the possibility of it getting delayed. I know that's something we've kind of talked about off podcast before and our worries for that. But I mean, in the trailer it said December, so hopefully they wouldn't change it 4 months out. But you never know. What do you think, bro?
Yeah, I'm hoping with the amount of time that they've held off on this, and then them making the certain comment within the trailer of this Christmas, it feels pretty concrete. But they don't really have a backup plan if they can't release it in December, because even if they did have the Disney Plus kind of style day and date release strategy, because Sony doesn't have a streaming service to do that on.
Yeah.
Even if they did approach that, it would make nowhere near the amount of money that this event film should. So I mean, if it's absolutely inconceivable for them to put it out in theaters in December, I guess it's gonna have to get delayed. But I would be heartbroken.
Oh, me too, man. Honestly, I'd be absolutely gutted. And the thing is as well with this movie, because it's just a culmination of this, Spider-Man trilogy as we know it, and a lot of different characters from previous films, decades ago even. I think with if the pandemic aside, if the pandemic wasn't a situation, this film could easily make, $2 billion. Like I think this would have been up there with the Avengers films for me. But it's interesting. Is obviously that's something that I'm sure the Marvel executives have taken more into account because they're, businessmen and women at the end of the day. So I guess that's kind of their field. But you'd still think that despite the pandemic and stuff, this film is going to get a lot of bums and seats across the globe. It's going to make a lot of money.
Yeah.
And I think the trailer goes to show, like, this is the most hype I've seen for a Marvel film probably since Endgame. And it feels like a long time ago where I felt really anticipated for a comic book film like I did for those ones. But yeah, man, if you made notes in the film, I'll pass over to you just for your opening thoughts and stuff.
Yeah, we both discussed, we were messaging back and forth yesterday, before we saw each other in person, to chat about it. And I think we were both taken aback a little bit by the heft of presence of Doctor Strange. We were aware he was going to take on, the Iron Man and the Nick Fury mentor style role. But, they probably had, 15, 20 minute screen time in the film, in their respective films. But Doctor Strange seems to be a main player in this,
Yeah,
and I think we're
certainly
both
seems that way.
somewhat hesitant about that. Because I think science has always had a place in Spider-Man films, and he's obviously intrinsically linked to the multiverse in many stories, and with this being at the very least a multiversal Sinister Six film, at the most a Spider-Verse film, science obviously has a place, but magic seems a bit weird.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I think what phase are we in now? Phase four of the
Hmm.
universe. Like it does seem like it is going to that sort of magic focused stories. And I saw a lot of trailer breakdown suggesting that this movie is going to adapt the One More Day storyline. I think, which obviously, for Marvel fans out there and theorists, features Mephisto, I believe. So yeah, I mean, I think throughout these Spidey films, it's a good idea to pair him up with a more experienced character that we're familiar with, like Iron Man or Nick Fury. But it's got to the stage where we're two movies in. Like, I don't think maybe that's a good idea from this point on to have that kind of mentor figure to have back and forth. Like it's a dynamic we're used to now. It's not exactly fresh or original. But that being said, I really like Benedict Cumberbatch in that role, but do you think he is going to become that sort of Nick Fury style where he pops up in lots of different films and stuff, or what do you think they're doing? Because it seems like he's a massive player in the universe now.
Yeah, it seems that this phase especially is going to be balancing the cosmic threat of Kang in the multiverse, and also street level Thunderbolts style stuff, or Dark Avengers stuff. So I mean, at least 50% of the films are going to be this cosmic magical tone, which I think really lends itself to Doctor Strange. I think he's a very visually interesting character, and I think Benedict Cumberbatch's portrayal of the character sort of you know pulls me away from it a little.
Okay.
I think it's the accent. I think it's the accent. It's just incredibly off-putting. And like whenever I see him and stuff, I'm just a bit thrown.
Yeah. Yeah, I see what you're saying. And I think one thing that really struck me in this trailer, aside from the Doctor Strange presence and those kind of things, is that it does seem like the movie is just going to be big reveal. Big reveal. New Rockstar said a very similar thing. That's where I'm kind of getting this point from. But like maybe it was New Rockstars, maybe it was BHL Hudson, either one of the two. Both good channels to check out. But they sort of said like they wouldn't want the movie just to be big reveal, big reveal, big reveal. Like you want some emotional moments in there and those kind of things. So it's something that the Avengers films balance really well with like really cool visual spectacles, but also having like a good story with emotional heartbeats in there. So I just don't want this movie to just be like, okay, here's a villain from a previous film you've enjoyed. Here's another one. Here's another one. Here's an actor that you've enjoyed. Here's like another cameo. Those kind of things. So
Yeah.
I do think it'll balance it well. Like the MCU is good at that. And yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting to see as well how they balance such a huge cast of characters, bro. Like I don't think I've ever seen something as ambitious as this ever, really, to be honest with you.
Yeah, because speaking of the cast, I think one thing that we were very excited about was the prospect of the potential return of Charlie Cox as Daredevil.
Yeah.
And we see in the trailer that Peter approaches Doctor Strange for his help, and I'm not sure I can picture a scenario in which he has a chance to get a lawyer. I said this to you the other day. Unless it's he pulls him out of an interrogation room or something. But I don't really see a point in the film. If everything involving Doctor Strange, and him approaching him with about the spell takes
Yeah.
place in the first act or the first half an hour, I don't really see a moment where that they could have a full courtroom scene or something.
Yeah, certainly. It kind of seems like from the trailer anyway, there's a potential conflict between Spider-Man and Doctor Strange in there, and that they might sort of have different methods to it or approach. You see in the trailer, obviously, Peter disrupts the spell. So I think I would struggle to see how they're going to fit in so many cameos that we want. I think people want a Daredevil cameo. Maybe even Vulture. A Mysterio. That like Vulture and Mysterio were two characters like I've barely heard anyone talk about, but like people forget that like there's there's preface there for those storylines to be included in this film. To have, I was watching, strange enough, like the Morbius trailer yesterday as well, and the inclusion of Michael Keaton there and in that movie is bizarre. So I'm intrigued as well, and of course you've got the Venom universe there as well. So they're bound to do storylines there. But on the Charlie Cox Daredevil thing, I'd be so happy with just a small cameo. With Deborah Will as Karen Page as well. I think that'd be fantastic. But it's struggling to see how that would have a base in the movie and how they could sort of work that out. I was kind of saying to you as well, if the movie was like 3 hours long, 3.5 hours long, I'd still love it. You know what I mean? Just to get everything in there. But I'm not sure what the runtime is. So has it been confirmed yet?
No, that's usually not, until much closer to the release. We have no idea how long even the Eternals is. So I imagine we won't be hearing for quite a while. It's not usually until I think the cinemas have the film, which is a few weeks in advance. This whole story really is off the back of Spider-Man Far From Home, of course, with the reveal the Peter Parker is Spider-Man, and with the accusation that he murdered Mysterio. And I really think that Peter's taking the wrong lesson here, because he's like, oh, use your magic to make everyone forget that I'm Spider-Man, where he should just be asking, what one of his intelligent friends to prove that the video was faked and that he didn't murder Mysterio. Because the issue isn't that people know he's Spider-Man. The issue is that people know he's Spider-Man and think he's a murderer. Like, just prove that he's not a murderer, and then you're gonna be, you're gonna be a hero in everyone's eyes, and it's not gonna be an issue.
Yeah, exactly. I kind of find that strange myself, given that every hero in the MCU identity is publicly known anyway. So I kind of it seems a bit. It is classic Spider-Man for him to balance that two lives thing. Peter Parker and Spider-Man, and not trying to keep that secret. But I find it bizarre in the context of the universe that he would do that, because I don't think there's any hero that I can think of aside from maybe like Captain Marvel or something, where like the identity is not necessarily public knowledge. But yeah, like it's interesting you say that as well, because like you're saying, it's not just like a whole new iteration of a story here with the Sinister Six. Like there's still a story that has to deal with the identity stuff with Mysterio. Like that's something I actually forget as well, because the film is just, it has to deal with that sort of that issue. But I have confidence that they can pull that off. But I would agree with you that maybe it does seem like a bit of a silly way to include Doctor Strange in it. You know what I mean? Where there's maybe other options there.
And also, people may say, oh, well, it's not Spider-Man if he doesn't have a secret identity. But, pretty much everything about this MCU Spider-Man isn't authentic comic book Spider-Man. They're clearly doing something different.
Yeah.
And, if they're retroactively bringing the other Spider-Man into continuity, they're now saying that this is, the eighth film in an 8-film franchise.
Yeah.
You had the Raimi trilogy, then the 2 Amazing Spider-Man, and now the 3 Tom Holland films. And then it's the 8th film that pieces all of those 3 together, and this is not a Tom Holland film but a team film between all 3 of them. Then it doesn't really matter that it's not authentically comic book Spider-Man, because it's no longer the definitive Spider-Man. It's one of 3. And if you have any issues with this Spider-Man, you can always fall back onto the 2 more potentially authentic ones, because at least they now have their piece in the MCU history.
Yeah, and on that, providing the other 2 Spider-Men are in this film, I think we will get kind of a definitive, in my brain, like a definitive answer as to which one's our favorite. When you see them in their individual films, comparison's hard because each studio is trying to do something different Tobey Maguire's was classic Spidey. Andrew Garfield's a bit more gritty and stuff, a bit more real, certainly for the first film anyway. And then this Spidey is just crazy. It's its own universe. It's certainly different than original. But I think providing the other two are in it, I think in my brain I'll have a clear favorite. I mean, I have a clear favorite anyway, but it'll just solidify that for me. It'll be good. It'll be nice to see the other two have major roles, and maybe not in terms of screen time, but just in terms of the implications for the story. Because if it's a cameo from either of the two, that's absolutely fine. Like that's still better than nothing. But I would love them to have a decent amount of screen time nonetheless.
Hmm. I think there's a lot of suspicion about what Doctor Strange is up to. He seems a bit sinister in this trailer. He gives Peter a bit of a cheeky wink. Like he's a bit of a rascal.
Yeah,
I'm a bit concerned here. Because obviously when we met Doctor Strange, he was this arrogant surgeon, and then he was humbled. Whenever he began to learn magic, and then he became an arrogant wanker, but now about magic. He's very protective of everything. He thinks, but before he was the savior of lives, and that gave him, a huge ego. And now he's the savior of the universe, and now he has a huge ego. And I'm just wondering, do you think he's just being reckless because he no longer has the ability to see into the future because the time stone is gone? So he's just left to like fall back on his ego, and he's just making genuine human mistakes? Or do you think there's something more sinister afoot?
That's really a good question, bro, because the Doctor Strange film isn't one that I've rewatched. I've just seen it the once, so it's not a character I know a lot about or can remember memorable scenes there. But yeah, it's funny because I think in the trailer as well, if I'm correct, he still has like the chain where the time stone would have went, like the Eye of Agamotto or something. So it's interesting to see like what's going on there. Is it just a bit of jewelry now or something? But yeah. I think that's a good point. I think taking that away from the character is good because then every plot point you could just write off and say, sure, just go into the future and change it. You know what I mean? Or those kind of things. Or so I think it's a smart idea to do that. But that being said, I do agree. I think there's a bit of a sinister element to him. Maybe they'll explore that more in a second film, a bit more closely. But I felt something was a bit off with him, mate. I would definitely agree with you on that one for sure.
I think I'm a little concerned myself, and I've sensed that you do too. That this is going to be the central conflict of the film, and that the Sinister Six, despite seemingly being a huge presence, and there being so many of them, are somehow going to be relegated for the sake of like a third act battle between Spider-Man and Doctor Strange to give us something new and different. But I mean, heroes fighting heroes, it's not new and different. It's not even new and different in the MCU. We've had a whole film about it. Like I don't need to say it again. I want to see Spider-Man, 3 Spider-Men, ideally, fighting the Sinister Six. Like that's my dream film, and I think that'll be the sentiment shared by a lot of people. And I think if Doctor Strange and their train battle is the third act of the film, I think you're gonna piss off countless
completely.
people.
1,000,000%, bro, 1,000,000%. I've kind of.
I mean, there's no way this film doesn't piss off some people in some capacity. It's gonna. I think it'll meet my expectations because I'm trying to be very reasonable. I'm not. If Andrew and Toby aren't there, that's fine. It'd be great, but I understand it hasn't been confirmed. There's no reason to believe that. It would make sense, I suppose, because their villains are coming back. But, I'm not going to really push it. I think the villains are enough. I'd be satisfied with the villains provided they're done well.
Yeah, I have an interesting question to ask you in that, bro, because one of our favorite comic book films, I think, is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Probably one of our favorite films in general, I'd say. But do you think if that film wasn't as successful, we wouldn't have got this film? Or do you think that there's no real correlation there, that this film was always going to be intended anyway? Because I don't think anyone could have anticipated that animated film to be as great as it was. So what's your thoughts?
Yeah. I think it was inevitable, but I don't think it would happen now. I think, there was no way that they were going to pass up the opportunity to make that much money, and have that much, fan excitement and, discussion generated. Like there wasn't going to be no way that they were going to never do that. I'm just wondering, because obviously to make this make sense, they needed to then cultivate this entire multiverse arc around it, which included Loki, WandaVision to some degree, and now Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. So I mean, whether this story would have existed in isolation of just it being a multiverse story and then no exterior multiverse arc is interesting. I feel like this wouldn't have been number three, I don't think. I think they would have held off on the multiverse arc and they would have made this, the fourth or the fifth film, or the last film they were going to make with Tom Holland, and then be a goodbye to all of the Spider-Man, and then bring in Miles Morales or something. So I think this was definitely going to happen, but I think because it's still in the current, public mindset, the current zeitgeist, I think Kevin Feige jumped on it while the
Yeah.
idea was still in discussion.
Yeah, it makes sense. It does make sense. And it's funny because throughout the trailer, it kind of seems like they're not really taking Loki or WandaVision into account in terms of the multiversal stuff, because it seems here that Peter interrupting Doctor Strange's spell has kind of caused that. So I'll be interested to see whether they're just not going to. I'd be a little bit annoyed actually if they didn't reference Loki at all in this film or Doctor Strange, just because like that seemed so major for the universe at the time. And it's so recent as well. Like it was only a few weeks ago, I think, when that show concluded. So it's still so fresh in our minds. So it's interesting to see that the trailer kind of suggests otherwise now, that, okay, Loki's its own thing. What's going on there with the sacred timeline and the branches and stuff? What's happened here is actually Peter interrupts Doctor Strange's spell, so to speak. So I don't know. I think though Marvel's very good at correlating different stories and blending them together, and this is really ambitious. The multiverse is really ambitious, and it's going to piss some people off, I think, because especially when they take the gamble of taking previous characters that we love from films 20 years ago or 10 years ago with the Garfield ones or whatever. Like there will be subtle changes to the characters there where you can tell they are the same characters, but there's little subtle changes in there where you think, okay, this is a new studio behind it here. So
even the visual style,
exactly,
like
even the visual style,
Alfred Molina filmed not by Sam Raimi was a bit disarming.
Do you want to get into that, because that's kind of that was our main talking point over text yesterday, and we kind of thought that it looked strange. You'd sent me a photo of it, and I thought it looked weird, and then I sort of showed you like a zoom in shot, and his eyeball looks incredibly strange. What are your thoughts, mate, on that one? I guess is what I ask.
Well, really, the big talking point for me, being a bigger Spider-Man fan than Spider-Man 2, my big moment was actually the pumpkin bomb and hearing Willem Dafoe's laugh.
Yes.
To me that was a lot more thrilling than seeing Dr. Octopus. I think every visual effect in the trailer looks absolutely incredible, aside from Alfred Molina's horrifying textureless face. I think it's an absolute nightmare. People had a real issue with how they resurrected, Peter Cushing using CGI. They invented an entire new face and slapped it on someone else. For Star Wars Rogue One, and here, they're taking actual Alfred Molina and just smoothing him out. And I think there's been a lot of praise heaped onto Marvel for their de-aging. For a company with seemingly infinite infinite amount of money, disaster. I think Hank Pym in his de-aging's pretty reasonable. Ego, poor. Tony Stark, horrendous. And this is probably somewhere between, I'd say somewhere between Ego and Tony Stark. I don't think it's like horrifying. Like, I don't think it's upsetting to look at, but it doesn't look quite human. My uncanny valley's kind of kicking in, and it's not quite right.
I'd certainly be interested to see how they're bringing back all these characters from previous films, given that a lot of them have died. I would be. How would you feel if they said, okay, these aren't actually the characters from the Raimi films or the Mark Webb films. These are actually characters that just look the same, but they're from a different universe. Like, would that annoy you in a way, or would that be fine?
Villains, that's the only way I want it to play out. I feel I'm in full agreement with people that are saying, if you bring back Doc Ock and he's genuinely evil again, and it's legitimately the Doc Ock from the end of Spider-Man 2, from the Raimiverse, it does ruin that character's arc. I'm in full agreement with that. So I'm very keen for that to just be someone who happens to look exactly like him. But then in that scenario, why are you de-aging him? Alfred Molina sort of spilled the beans and said that, I mean, to be fair, actors of his age, him and Michael Keaton seem to be very unaware of how the multiverse works. That they kind of need it very spelled out to them. So in his mind, he has put forward that he is, the Doc Ock from Spider-Man 2, but honestly, I'm not 100% sure he knows what he's talking about. I'm
He's been
pretty
in a lot
sure.
of movies, to be fair.
Yeah,
I'll
it
believe
could
his
just be,
filmography is huge, so he probably forgets a few of them.
he says, they essentially pick up where they left off. That doesn't mean it's, one to one the same guy,
Yeah.
and I hope it's not. And it seems Electro can't feasibly be, because he's no longer blue. He's shooting yellow lightning. So I'm not really sure how it's gonna play out. But the variants, sorry, the villains, I would love to be variants. I don't want them to be the villains from the films we've seen. But if they bring back Toby and Andrew, and they're not the Toby and Andrew from the films that we know and love, I would rather they weren't in it.
Yeah, I'm with full agreement with you on that one, bro. And I think for me, shockingly, of all the actors from the Spider-Man filmography they could bring back, the one I would be most amazed with, and like just my face would light up if they brought Thomas Hayden Church Sandman back.
Mm,
Now, it's interesting because you see a few like sandstorms and stuff in the trailer, and it kind of
yeah,
appears like one of them is sort of protecting Spider-Man, like from the electricity. That would make sense in the context of the Thomas Hayden Church character,
yeah.
and that arc. And he's one of the few villains that's not actually dead, so it would feasibly be okay to bring him back.
Hmm.
I know he's kind of a bit of a guilty pleasure of actor wise of ours, and certainly that film I think he's very good. I would love to see him back, mate. What about you?
Yeah, absolutely. The rumored Sinister Six lineup is Electro, Doc Ock, Green Goblin, Lizard, Rhino, Sandman. I don't know who thought most of those were a good idea. I think Lizard, if you bring back Amazing Spider-Man Lizard, he needs a redesign. I think if you
Definitely,
can redesign Abomination and excuse that, you can redesign Lizard.
definitely.
I think if he's in it, he's got to have the snout. You need the snout.
And the
Uh,
and this sort of the coat as well, the laboratory coat. I'd like that.
yeah, absolutely. Rhino was critically reviled. Like he was, Paul Giamatti's performance was one of the things in the Amazing Spider-Man 2 that was kicked the hardest. So I mean, I have no idea, if that is the case and they brought back Paul Giamatti, I don't know what idiot thought that up, or it could be Paul Giamatti giving an actual good performance as a different version of the same character. That, if he's a variant, I understand. If he's the same character, stupid. And then I'd say I'm pretty happy with the rest of them. I don't think there's ever been a perfect Sinister Six lineup. I think you always have one weak one. Like I'd say 50% of Spider-Man's Rogues Gallery are dog shit, and then 50% are great. Doc Ock's great. Vulture's great, I think. But like Electro's always been a bit of a weak one for me.
Me
But
too.
but I understand with the star power of Jamie Foxx, and the visual spectacle of the electricity powers. I fully get it, and I think they'll do it well. But some characters I'm a bit hesitant about.
I find it quite interesting because if you look at all those actors, those actors who play those villains, right? In the films that they're in, it's pretty much 50% Spider-Man, 50% them. Like they are the second, co-lead, if you will.
Mhm.
Certainly that was the way it appeared for me with Jamie Foxx. Like he gets a lot of screen time in the second film for me. So I think it's going to be really interesting and quite bizarre to see these big name actors. Let's say if they bring back Willem Dafoe, what looks like, Alfred Molina, of course. Jamie Foxx is a huge name, and to have him be in the film for like 5 to 10 minutes seems like not necessarily a waste, but it's like it would be like having Robert Downey Jr. appear in this film for like 5 minutes. Like it's such a big name for just so little screen time, and I get that's going to happen with these big blockbuster films, especially when you're culminating so many stories, so many characters together. But it's the cast list for this is going to be absolutely incredible to see. And that's not even including characters from this universe. We're talking about like Happy Hogan here, Aunt May. Like these are characters who are really important to Spider-Man's story. So I'm glad to see they didn't get neglected in the trailer either. It seems like obviously Happy Hogan's back, which I know you're a big Johnny Favreau fan, so it's always great to see as well. And yeah, I mean like Jamie Foxx is the big one for me, where I think I really do like Jamie Foxx. I think he's really good. I just he's one of those. Is he one of the ones that's confirmed, or is he teased, or what's going on?
Jamie Foxx is 100%. He was the first one confirmed to return, and then it was Alfred Molina, and then no one has been 100% confirmed other than that. Willem Dafoe has now appeared on the Wikipedia page. I suppose off the back of hearing his laugh. But I mean, I wouldn't take that as a 100%. I'd take it as a 99%. But fingers crossed, because he's always been my favorite.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I hope they don't try to DH him.
I was watching all of his scenes from the original Spider-Man, like yesterday, like a montage. I'm like, I mean, I think I've really overlooked that first one. Like, it's so good, and he's just fantastic. Like, just like
That
his facial
boardroom scene has big Obadiah Stane vibes.
It does. Like, do you know how much I sacrificed? Like, it's absolutely fantastic. Like, there's so many. Like, usually with a lot of film, like memeable moments, like, it's bad acting, but he is genuinely fantastic. Like, his line delivery and facial expressions is remarkable. I think he's probably one of the best comic book villains there's ever been, still to this day. Really good.
Absolutely. I'm trying to picture like the sequence, the order of events as they're presented in the trailer. So I mean, I don't know anything. I've heard stuff about who's appearing and like minor stuff, but I actually don't know how it's going to play out in what order.
Mhm.
From seeing it, it seems we pick up where Far From Home left off. He's picked up by the police. That they tell him the charges. He goes back to, like, he's let off. Briefly. He goes back to high school. But he still needs to defend himself. So he has the exchange. With Charlie Cox there, and then I think, and then he goes to Doctor Strange. Gets the memories of everybody removed. Then I think the Sinister Six appear in that highway scene. I think that's going to be the first act, and then there's something about Doctor Strange that I won't say because it is a spoiler. But then I think around about the middle is when that train fight exchange is going to happen, and then they at that point I think they've probably dealt with the Sinister Six, captured them, and then I think they're going to get re-released, and then they have a final battle that we've seen nothing of, and that's where Toby and Andrew appear. I think. I reckon they can't be in it until the third act. Because I mean, from what we've seen, I just don't think there's any room for them.
I think that's absolutely spot on, mate. I think that's probably similar to what I think is going to happen. There's been a lot of plot leaks going on. A lot of these plot leaks from things that I've read and stuff seem very different. So obviously not all of them can be true. So there's clearly misinformation and stuff there. So I think probably in my brain, if putting everything I've seen from the trailer, that's probably how I would have to say as well. I'm not sure where they're gonna. The only thing I'm curious is when they're gonna introduce these villains in the Sinister Six, because it seems like a lot of characters to introduce just in one act. Maybe I'm not sure whether like it'll just be Doc Ock and it'll be action scenes by universe. Okay, so like the first act would be the Raimi film, second act would be the Garfield ones. I'm not too sure what they're gonna do there, but man, like yeah, go ahead.
I think the shot with Doc Ock is deceptive. I don't think he's actually in that highway scene. I think that's going to come from the third act whenever he first encounters Tobey Maguire. But I think I think that the highway scene that I imagine would be in the first third of the film is going to be mostly Green Goblin, if not just Green Goblin.
Yeah, it's interesting. I hear a lot of people saying that when Doc Ock is speaking to Peter there, it's not actually to Tom Holland, might be to Tobey Maguire.
Have thought so.
Yeah. It's gonna be so interesting. I'm still I know I say this in like every Spider-Man related podcast, but like I really hate the MCU suits, man. I fucking hate them. Like, honestly, like the Iron Spider suit, it looks cool, but like Spider-Man, for me, traditional Spider-Man, like you don't need to change costume every movie. Obviously, there's little alterations with the Raimi ones and the Garfield ones, but I just like the classic, just the red, white, and blue ones. You know what I mean? But
it's all about toys, man.
But it's all about the marketing. I can see why they do it for sure. But I think one of the main promotional images before the trailer was released was like the new Spidey costume, like the black and gold one. I'm not sure whether that's like against Electro or Doctor Strange or something. I'm not sure. It's got a cool quality to it. Like, it looks fun, but I don't know, man. I just hope every film he just doesn't chop and change suits, because I do like I like I really like the black and red one, actually. I think it's probably my favorite one so far. But
right,
yeah,
my favorite one was the one that they used on set of Civil War, and then they just CGI'd over it.
The raised webbing one.
Yeah. So that'd be my favorite, and then it'd be the red and blue, then black and gold, and then black and red, because I don't like that at all, especially the white spider on the back. I'm just not a fan. But I do understand their desire to presuming that the other two Spider-Men are in the film, to have a level of visual distinctness. I understand, if you want in in theory, in reality, Tom Holland is the star of this film. He deserves to have his third film be his. I do think he should have had a third film by himself, and then a a Spider-Verse event film.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
I do think he deserved, this to just be an identity crisis type film, and then to have the next film be Spider-Verse. But I understand the desire to visually distinguish him from the other two Spider-Men. I'm wondering how they're planning to do that with Toby and Andrew, provided presuming that Andrew's wearing his Spider-Man 2 outfit. So obviously you have the visual distinctness of their different physiques. Like obviously Andrew Garfield is much taller than the other two. But do you think sticking him in the Amazing Spider-Man 1 suit's a better idea?
I think they might just do the classic MCU thing of just not having them in masks. Really, I think maybe that's an idea they could do. I know a lot of fan made promotional material is they kind of have Tobey Maguire with a beard. I mean, that's certainly one thing they could use to distinguish. I'm not sure if I would like them to have new suits for Tobey and Andrew if that's the case. Just because I feel like that's them losing their special quality from their films and becoming sort of MCU brainwashed, not brainwashed, but like MCU ified, if you will. You know what I mean, with the cool gadgets and stuff. I think I can't help but think in my brain that because Sam Raimi is directing Doctor Strange 2, and that's obviously a major player, he's obviously a major player within this film. I can't help but feel that maybe there's going to be some kind of continuation of the story with that film, like especially with him being like the Spider-Man director, like he's the guy, that's the guy who like he loves the comics and stuff, So I'm holding out, man. If Toby's back for this one, you never say never with these things, but like I would absolutely love for Sony to greenlight like a fourth Spider-Man film or something, man. I would absolutely love that. It's so unlikely to happen, but I think it would be absolutely incredible.
I mean, obviously there's very, very little to compliment DC on right now. That their continuity is a mess. But at least they have, they entrust like the directors to make films outside of their shared continuity. And I feel like once you've established the multiverse and that it exists, and presumably it's not going away. Like I imagine, if Doctor Strange just like pruned all the branches after we've already like met Toby and Andrew, it's essentially like Doctor Strange is committing mass genocide. If he just decides to kill everyone from every branch timeline. So once you've established that they're really a retroactive part of this continuity, I think you can respect the intelligence of the audience enough to show a different Spider-Man in a different universe.
Definitely.
I mean, if people could watch Into the Spider-Verse and be like, but I thought Tom Holland was Spider-Man. Like I think I think if you can respect them enough to trust them to understand that, I think you can do that with this.
I definitely feel like cinematic continuity is not a big of a deal as it used to be, especially with there being so many different Marvel movies and DC movies coming out now. Like when I was like super into these films and like watch videos about them every day and stuff, like I was a really big supporter of like continuity, but kind of a bit older now and stuff. When you watch all these films, you kind of think, I don't think majority of audience would care if there was like a Spider-Man 4 and if they were just told, oh yeah, it's just a continuation of Tobey Maguire's story, this has nothing to do with Tom Holland. Like I don't think a lot of people would care. Obviously there is such thing as bad continuity where like it's just bad storytelling. A lot of the X-Men films spring to mind there, although they're fantastic films, a lot of them. I think everyone would agree that maybe the continuity is just not up to the storytelling level or the character level. But yeah, I think the MCU's done a very good thing in opening so many doors with the multiverse. So it's opening so many stories. I just think it would maybe, in a way, by closing those doors in a future film, that kind of limits itself for those stories. So I just think while we're here, while we've got this, just go for it. Like push the boat out with some of these films. Let's get a fourth Spidey film. I would love another Garfield film as well. I would absolutely love that. But yeah, like I'm just happy that we've got this stage now where we can see all these old villains from previous films that we love culminate on screen together. It's gonna be great.
I'm not sure how to articulate this quite exactly, but obviously, we had the Raimi trilogy first, and then we had the Andrew Garfield films, and now the Tobey films wrapped up even before the birth of the MCU, so they predate the MCU entirely. But now because of the multiverse arc, and them now opening up the multiverse to bring back these actors, they're essentially establishing, by making this the quote unquote sacred timeline, in Loki, they're saying that this is the definitive version of the characters, and then the others are just variants of these definitive characters. So instead of Tobey Maguire being the most important Spider-Man, now he's just a variant of Tom Holland. Tom Holland isn't a variant of anyone else. He is the definitive Spider-Man, and now Tobey, despite him having this legacy as Spider-Man that predates the MCU, he's now just a Tom Holland variant. And I guess it's just the way it is.
It's a bit
Presumably
soul crushing though, isn't it?
everybody's agreed to that creative decision. But now the MCG, I don't know how to articulate, but it just feels disrespectful. Like
No, I
I think
agree.
the way that they approach the multiverse as being related to time rather than reality is something that I still haven't wrapped my head around. And I think I don't even know if the creatives have, because I've heard them describe the multiverse, and it feels a bit muddled. Instead of being, I understood, time travel creating branch timelines, but now all the branch timelines are created, and that has led to, that's the idea of the multiverse. It's just branch timelines. So presumably, we discussed this in our final Loki review. How I guess things like the reason that the Raimi universe looks entirely different to the MCU universe is because that there was a variation at the dawn of time or something, and then every subsequent event was entirely different. That's why Peter Parkers were born different. All these people were born different, born decades earlier. That's why they look different. I'm struggling to finish up here,
No, I
but
see what
like,
you're saying. I
I,
see what you're saying
you know,
because I
just the
think
fact that they're now like, the MCU is it, and
everything
everything
else
that
is
came before
extra.
it or
Yeah.
will come after is just you know spinning out of what we created, even though this came first.
Yeah, and in a way, mate, like as much as it feels quite sort of, it feels a bit weird to me because when I think of comic book heroes, like the godfather of comic book heroes, I kind of think Christopher Reeve, Superman, like maybe like Michael Keaton or Adam West or something, Tobey
Mm,
Maguire, Hugh Jackman, and Robert Downey Jr. Like that's the main five for me of like, the comic book staple were like, different generations of the films. So I kind of feel like for me, just saying that the MCU is like the hot shit right now, and saying, okay, this is everything else is just, this is the main universe. Everything else um, is just as a result of what's happened in our universe.
yeah,
I don't know whether
like they're
insulting
now saying that the events of Spider-Man only happened because
of us.
Sylvie Loudpeason stabbed He Who Remains.
Yeah,
Just because she killed a guy at the end of at the end of the universe, at the end of time.
yeah,
Tobey Maguire now exists as Peter Parker. Like it hurts your head, I think, to think
it
about,
does. It
because we
absolutely
don't
does.
have a full understand. As Doctor Strange said in the trailer, the multiverse is a concept of which we know frighteningly little. And I think that's the case, and I would very much like some clarity on that. And
Certainly.
presumably we're going to get a taster of that in this film, and then full recognition of it in the Doctor Strange sequel.
Yeah, no, absolutely, bro, absolutely. And I think one day there's gonna be a day where Marvel and DC cross over. I think it's definitely inevitable. Like that would, without doubt, I think be the biggest film of all time if that happens. So I think with the
Mm.
multiverse and stuff, but certainly both cinematic universes are going with that. I think is it the Flash movies going for like a Flashpoint approach and those kind of things. Obviously, Michael Keaton Batman coming back. So I mean, I'm really excited to see where both universes going, especially the MC, because it's more expansive in terms of the universe, and there's obviously been more movies. So, um, man, yeah, I don't have much more to say in the trailer, bro. But it's got me so excited for the film. It really has.
I'm gonna have to actually get you to watch the Michael Keaton Batman
You have
films
to,
before we see the Flash.
and the Christopher Reeve Superman films. A lot of the old
Yeah,
DC ones I haven't seen.
yeah. I'm just wondering how a DC and Marvel film could work. I don't think Kevin Feige would ever let it happen with the DCEU in the current state it is, because it is a continuity disaster. So I mean, if they use the Flash film to clean that up, and they not only travel through the multiverse but also change time, or have multi, or have universal implications. I think it
Yeah.
will. And I think if they clean up the continuity, it's closer in sights, but then I think it's still a mess to explain, because there's the MCU multiverse, there's the DC multiverse, but then where's the Venn diagram where the two could cross over? I think it's just a bit of a mess.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree, bro. I think it's something that they'd probably be quite silly to never do.
Mm.
Especially when well, especially the MCU is like, it's kind of at the peak level of popularity right now, where like every film is guaranteed, success, no matter what the character, you know what I mean? Like, if you take the Shang-Chi character, for example, like that's maybe like a C or D-list level character in my view. But I think the movie alone will propel that character and the mythos up to new heights, which is going to be great to see. And from the early reviews of that film as well, I was watching Chris Stuckman sort of talk about it, and he absolutely loved it. Like, he said it was the best action since Winter Soldier, if not the best ever in the MCU. So that's another film I'm super excited for. And yeah, like it's an exciting time for the industry, obviously, with a lot of more cinemas opening up and those kind of things. It makes sense to sort of start, pumping out a bit more movies. So I'm just really just hyped for it, man. Honestly, this is probably the most hyped I've been for a comic book film since, Avengers Endgame, I'd say.
Yeah, I'm a bit worried that we're 4 months out and I've had a significant amount spoiled for me,
Yeah.
and apparently the entire plot of the film has leaked online, and it's apparently accurate. I'm terrified that I'm just going to hear everything before I get to see it. There's usually the odd spoiler that I hear from time to time for the films. You know, well, whether it's a character death or something like that. But I worry that I know too much about this film to enjoy it in the way that I should. I mean, this should
Yeah.
be the best film. And obviously not the highest
I
caliber
see what you're saying,
quality of
man.
film ever made. But I mean, specifically for me, this should be the best thing I've ever seen. Because Spider-Man's been such a big part of my life. And Tobey Maguire his portrayal of the character is so important to me. And if the joy is sucked out of that, by knowing every little
Yeah.
thing that appears, it sucks.
Yeah, it's a buzzkill, mate. It really is. Like, it sucks that leaks and stuff come out like that so easily. But um, you'd think with the MCU and Disney being such like a well organized, well-oiled machine, that they'd have that on lockdown. To
I
be
think
honest, like,
it's I think it's Sony. I think it's because they've had leaks of their films before. They've had their emails leaked. I think that their security just isn't up to scratch.
yeah, it probably is that, actually. The more we think about it, to be honest,
Because
yeah,
I
I
mean,
think
when
you're
have
right.
we ever had a leaked Captain America trailer, or
Yeah, never happened.
a
Yeah,
leaked trailer for any other Marvel film? But I mean, every time you go to Comic Con, you get the leaked DC trailers, or you get the Deadpool trailers from Fox, or you get the Sony films. So I mean, I think they just don't have it quite as locked down.
yeah, it's a pity. It's a pity. But any more notes on the trailer from yourself, bro?
No, nothing else for me. I mean, I think we both thought this was gonna be a 10-minute quick chat.
Yeah,
I mean, really, I think we both knew. If we were talking about the trailer, we were going to talk about the film, and if we're going to talk about the film, we're going to talk about all of Spider-Man. If we're going to talk about all of Spider-Man, we talk about all of the MCU. We talk about all the MCU. We're just talking life, aren't we?
we are, and it's been a really. I had a really good recording today. I felt it was a really good chat, and
It's boiling again in Northern Ireland, by the
the
way.
heat
So I mean,
waves
I'm
back,
sitting here
boys.
sweating.
Heat waves back. Heat waves back. I suppose with this being a podcast, we'll hop into a bit
Of
of.
course it is.
Well, it definitely is at this point. I'd say maybe close to 40 to 50 minutes. It's found to be quite long.
Mm.
But yeah, I suppose we'll give you a little bit of a future episode chat for the channel, because in a few days' time we're going to be doing a wee. I don't know if it'll be our first reaction video together, but it's the
Mm.
Jake Paul Tyron Woodley fight, isn't it, Callum? So yeah, we're going to be
Mm.
doing a wee video for that. Um,
Yeah, I know nothing about boxing. I have the the smallest grasp on the sport conceivable, and I'm sure I'll reiterate that on the day. You know, I've seen most of the YouTube fights, and you know, this is, I suppose, one of those again. I would never watch like an Anthony Joshua fight and, you know, say, yeah, Matthew, let's turn the camera on. You know, I know what I'm talking about.
We
You
both
know,
want to see Jake
but
Paul's face pummeled.
yeah, I mean, it'll be 20 minutes of us like slagging off Jake Paul, you know, so I know how to do that, so it shouldn't be a huge issue.
Yeah, it'll be fun. It'll be fun. Did you like? I wonder, did you want to do like a live stream for it or something, or like at least have a live reaction to it?
I think we could do a couple of tests and see what we can manage.
Definitely.
I think that's maybe the way to go.
Definitely. But yeah, thank you very much for today, Callum. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And thank you very much, viewers, for watching. We do appreciate that also. Be sure to like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts on the No Way Home trailer down below. We'd love to read and react to them. And you can check out our email and our iTunes link in the description below. So yeah, hope you guys are all well. Hope your family and friends are all safe and well too. Take care, everyone, and bye-bye.
Bye.